Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. First of all, I am extremely delighted to be here today to present our recent research into the next generation of robotics. My name is Christian Souche, as mentioned, from south of France, in Sofia. So for those that don't know where is Sofia Antipolis, it is not in Bulgaria. It is more on the Côte d'Azur, so we are very lucky to be in a very nice location where we have the best talent working today on the research, development, and incubation of the next technologies. So I have been working the last 15 years on innovation, artificial intelligence applied to conversation, automated chatbot, for instance, applying artificial intelligence in creativity contents, but as well looking more recently about how we could bring more intelligence in robots. We have been using industrial robots over the last decade and even more. But today we have a next generation of robotics that is upcoming. And as part of this presentation, I would like to describe what will be the future of robotics and specifically looking about what it will change for a specific industry. Of course, the next generation of robotics doesn't intend just to revolutionize shopping. Of course, the intent is looking about cross industries, cross markets. But I think that retail is at a point where the robotics will accelerate in the next months and next years, and because of three forces. First one is the economy in retail. I think that in the next slide, I will get to describe in detail what is happening and what happened over the last 3 years in the retail industry. So this specific industry is undergoing a massive revolution. And that's the first aspect. The second one is the robotic inflection points. So today, thanks to the latest advances in terms of technologies, the robotics could achieve incredible kind of activities, tasks, and even taking decision in a very complex situation. So we'll get to describe what happened over the last 2 years in this technology. And lastly, I think that we have to be quite frank, in the retail industry, either the retailers transform or they will going to die. And the reason is that some companies already massively adopted the robotics and they're leading the way on what will be the future of our shopping experience. So, as mentioned, we have a chance to have a question and answer at the end of the session, so don't be shy. Get to note all your questions. A lot of slides. I will try to keep on time and not spend time on my presentation and leaving some time for the question and answer. But just drop your question at any time. And even if we don't have time, at the end, I can answer your question offline by emails. So firstly, let's start by the basics. What happened in the retail economy? And fortunately, you are still shopping online or in a store. But firstly, we see that we're in a situation where we are consuming more and more. The expectations are growing, and we have so much opportunities to buy that at the end we are buying each day online in a store, and that is driving a lot of changes on the way that retailers has to follow the expectations. Something happened for those that are not aware. There was something called the COVID-19, and it is like you have a train that is full speed, and you ask the train to stop and to change the direction. It is exactly what happened in this industry. They had to stop everything, close the stores, redesign the processes, and massively change all their operating models. It didn't work well. It was very complex. And right after moving the train in another direction, restarting full speed, what happens? It restarted to get back in stores, people asking more and more. So in Walmart, they have measured that an increase of digital sales by 170%, 35% of more deliveries. So they had to increase the capacity of the micro-fulfillment centers. So they had to make a massive change for the COVID-19. And now we get to see that people are getting back in the stores. We still have an increase of revenues that restarted in 2021. We see that this growth is happening for the next 5 years. But as I said, the in-store is not dying. We see that people are getting back in the stores. There is a sales increase of 8% on the last year. And we can see that is not something going to change. So we believe during the COVID period that everybody will now just buy online is not what happens. Today, we can see that people are still buying online, but still going in a store for multiple reasons. And one of the interesting stats is the second one. 35% of the US citizens still go in store for the experience. And being in family, with friends, making shopping in a store is something that you couldn't substitute today with digital experiences. So stores will be still a massive component to develop for the retailers. They just have to face challenges, the new challenges that has growth over the last years. Firstly, the complex omnichannel supply chain operations. Let's be frank, the way that retailers are dealing with the supply chain, I will get in the details later on, is just a disaster. So some of the retailers try to transform, try to optimize, but we have some companies that are extremely good in supply chain. Just to name one, I think that everybody knows about them, is Amazon. If you get to live in New York, you order a product, 2 hours later you get your product delivered. Today, in Europe, very few retailers could deliver in 2 hours, mainly because of the supply chain and the logistics. The inefficient of store operations, again, the retention rate. I will share some numbers about this, but people are not staying in a store. There is a massive labor shortage. It is very hard today to walk in a store, and the retailers are failing to really attract the talents, and people are not staying in the store. So that is another problem that they have to face. The changing customer needs. So as mentioned just before, people are looking at more and more expectation. I will get to describe this in the next slide. And of course, outdated in-store concept. So we have been designing a store before the digital happens. Now the digital happens and the store didn't really massively change. So we have to rethink the way that the stores could be designed. So I didn't forget my topic. It is still robotics, and I didn't mention about this too much. Don't be impatient, it's coming. So first, the complex omnichannel supply chain, the big problems. Lack of transparency, the errors that happen quite frequently, making a supply chain when there is no automation, the slow and rigid processes, all those factors drive inefficiency to deliver, impacts the customer experience, and of course, degrades the employee's experience. Secondly, the changing customer needs. So again, looking at higher transparency, looking at a better experience in the store, looking at better quality of the service. So customers are not comparing retailers against other retailers. They compare retailers against the top leading companies on the market. So it could be Apple, it could be some stores that really redesign completely their experience. So that's where the expectations are growing over the last decade. The inefficiency in the store, again, the pressure on the margin, the inflation, all those factors bring a lot of complexity for the retailer, for their labor workforce, and of course, the labor cost. That is one of the challenge of the retailers. And lastly, the outdated in-store concept. Again, people are coming in a store for the experience. They're looking to enjoy. They're looking to get products on the available products. And if you don't design an experience that is good enough, people are not coming anymore in the stores. But people, bear in mind, are still looking to go in the stores. So if they're not going in your stores, they are going to another stores. That's the reason why we have to redesign the overall experience. So one of the big questions is, what is the future of the retail? I mean, we are all customers. We are all expecting an incredible kind of experience, the store of the future, what it looks like. So on purpose, I put a robot walking aside of a human, but let's be frank, I don't think it's going to happen in the next 5 years. It's not what we believe that will be the future of the store. We had fantastic talents in Accenture, global people leading the retail industry, looking about what will be really the future of store. And we come up with a 3 big principles of the future of stores. Firstly, we have to design a space that is purely entertainment experience called La Promenade. And it is, I think, a French word, but yeah, definitely the place where we could really enjoy, see people cooking the product, enjoying electronic devices. So really the place where you can just enjoy, not necessarily making shopping, but discovering the product itself in action. A second one that is a SL, really the place where you can pick up products. But again, objective is to reduce by, to have 25% of the food stores that will be dedicated to the SL and to reduce it by 75% compared to today. So it is more digitalized, less products, but where a place where you can quickly pick up the product you are looking for. And the dark store. the dark store is the future of the warehouse, a place where you bring high level of automation and where you could easily serve online demand and orders while delivering product in a store. So this is really what we are looking for in the future of the stores, and specifically in the SL, we're looking about bringing more digital. Digital itself, will definitely be one of the major trends that will impact the future of the retailers, but it is not the only one. And today we are looking about bringing more automation in the overall retail infrastructure and services to fight against those big challenges. So, as mentioned, the complex omnichannel and supply chain operation. Interestingly, looking at the latest trends, retailers are not looking to invest in robotics. 57% are not looking to invest this year into robotics. That being said, I think that they will fail if they don't transform it themselves very quickly. Some of them, and most of them, started to invest in the warehouse, but not looking in a store. And I think that is something that is going to change in the next 2 years. The changing customer experience. So bringing more automation, of course, will increase the quality of the services. We see that people that doesn't get deliveries that happen in the next few hours get to cancel their cart. So 46% of the customers abandon their carts if they don't have a quick delivery. So retailers now have to meet such kind of expectation. And of course, we need to reduce the costs of the workforce, balancing what has to be human first and what should be automated by using some robotics. And of course, looking about reduce the errors and when you get to scan a product in a store, by bringing more robotics, we can increase this accuracy performance. And of course, again, looking still to upgrade the store of the future. So it is where we would like to position more automation and bringing a bit more quality in the service that will be delivered by the retailers. So the question is now, this automation could be led by artificial intelligence, could be led by digital, but we believe that the robotics will be one of the factors that will be adopted by the retailers in the next 5 years. Firstly, as mentioned, and that works across all the industries, the desirability. Labor shortage, it is a massive problem. Dangerous maintenance jobs. I would like to, as part of this presentation, that you bear in mind that robotics is not built on a business case. So what is a financial ROI? We are looking on a value case. So where is the value for a company to invest into robotics? It is not on the finance only. It could be led as well on reducing the risk, reducing the problem of the employees, and improving the quality of the customers. So that is another factor that we try to fight against, and that there is a clear demand from our clients across industries, reducing the repetitive task. I like the sentence I have read it recently. We are building robots to avoid that people becomes robots. Just bear with this sentence in your minds, because I think something that could resonate in the future. We are not trying to substitute people's job. We try to avoid to ask people to become robots. Let's better use what the robots can do and position the human at the right position in the organization. The viability, of course, there is some financial dimension that we can't offuscate, and we have to keep looking about the economics. And so improve the productivity, improve the quality, reduce the cost will be factors of adoption of robotics. Retailers are still fighting on their margin, and we can't just believe that they will invest just for the employee's experience. So that is another factor that we'll be looking at. And feasibility. So it has been mentioned this morning in the Matthias talk, but there are multiple advances in technologies across all the domains and across all our research within Accenture. But we can see that the robotics today, hardware, is extremely reliable and robust. I don't have exactly the numbers, but just to give you an interesting fact that we measured recently is that the hardware is failing less frequently than the software. So I think the hardware is quite fixed. Now we have to fix the software to make it efficient and working efficiently at scale. The connectivity, 5G, for those that are looking at the news, there is a 6G upcoming. Let's let's implement the 5G correctly already with robots, but looking at already about what will be the next version of the network, the computer vision, battery performance, and the decision making. So we clearly have a robot that gather the best of the emerging tech in a single piece, and that could make incredible stuff. At the end of the presentation, I will get to share what we are currently cooking with the latest technologies of robots. But I have a question for the room now. How many of you have been already dealing with the robots in your shopping experience? And just raise your hands if you have been doing it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I think that it is clearly underestimated. We can see that in Amazon, even you're not dealing directly face-to-face with robots, most of the online shopping you are currently doing is operated by robots already. So from 2019, there are more robots in Amazon than employees. And each time you are making an order online, there is a robot behind the scene that is operating all your order and making all the preparation of the parcel. So just bear in mind that even you have the belief that you never deal with the robots, in fact you did. When you click add to my cart and pay now, a robot just operates right after. And that is something that is happening behind the scene, and we are expecting tomorrow to be even in your front floor in the store. So, interestingly, at the same time, as I said, labor shortage, employee retention are huge factors. That is a recent news that happened, I think, yesterday. Amazon attrition cost 8 billion. Today, people are not staying in Amazon more than 90 days. I mean, only 1 on 3 is staying more than 90 days. People get there, it is just exhausting, it is not really purposeful, and they are just leaving. So there is clearly a trend of how we could reposition the human on interesting job while using the robots to make the repetitive and boring tasks. So that brings me to the next topic now, transform or die. It is where I will spend a bit more time, because that is a place where we have to think about how retailers are going to transform themselves, how they are going to transform their businesses, how they will going to transform their business processes to survive. And for those that are not doing it, I think that the future will be quite complex. So we have seen on the Market Watch that there is currently a big opportunity to transform, so more than 23 billion by 2024, on bringing more automation in the retail industry. Again, looking still at the same factors of adoption, reducing the man-hour, reducing the reducing the risk, and improving the experience of the customers. The robotics has already proven the efficiency and the productivity impacts across industries. And a domain that I think is important is the reskilling of the people adopting the robot. You just need 10 minutes to start working with the robot. So today, the barriers of how I can get working with a robot is not that huge. I don't know for those that has been already working with robots, but people believe that you need to get an engineer background and working during 10 years on robotics. Whereas today, it is fairly more easy to work with robots, develop application on robots, and using them in your businesses. So that is a domain that we have currently looking at specifically within Accenture, and looking about how we can easily deploy robots while looking at people that could work with them or manage them on the day-to-day activities. So the question is, how can we get started? How can we start deploying robots in a store and or in a warehouse? The story is not that simple, because it's not just putting a right robot like this one, putting in a store and expecting it works efficiently. There is a way more sophisticated approach, and I will get to share the strategy we get to use within Accenture and the ways that we get to evaluate the performance in terms of maturity and evaluation of your existing robotics deployments. Firstly, first stage, I would call it first stage 1, but it should be stage 0, in fact, no robot. I mean that you have nothing has been automated, there is no robot in place. Okay, I think that for retailers that are at this stage, they have directly to shift to the stage number 3, because it is way too late to start moving to the stage number 2. Stage number 2 is warehouse automation. Just to give you some numbers, I think 63% of the new micro-fulfillment centers and warehouses are automated. So the new ones that are coming are automatically automated by using robots. And for those that never seen it, we can get to share some examples and videos where you get to see more than 100 robots flying, because they are now in 3 dimensions. It doesn't get on the floor only, they get to fly almost in the warehouse to directly prepare a parcel. Is just impressive. So warehouse automation is already something that is mainstream. Most of the retailers now adopted the warehouse automation in that transformation. But we are moving to the next stage, an extended retail automation. So where we can start to infuse use cases beyond the warehouse automation. How can we start bringing robots in other dimensions? Stupid activity, for instance, loading and unloading a truck. It looks simple for a human. For a robot today, it's not that simple. We are still looking about how we could automate this activity, how we could bring robots in that domain, but still, it's not something that is mainstream. But of course, beyond the warehouse, there is also in-store. Are you ready to get robots in front of you in a store? That's a big question. And secondly, how it can be, I will say, efficient and working efficiently. And of course, the last piece will be to make, I will say, automated delivery. We have seen the videos from Nuro, from Starship, from Alibaba. They start to have autonomous vehicles on the roads making deliveries. Might be the future, a big question about the legislation, but that is a use case that we're exploring at the moment in our company. And the last piece, full connected robots, it is where the robot is not anymore just a use case, but become a revolution, when it becomes an ecosystem. And today, I will say that use case by use case, you will get perfect solution, perfect hardware, perfect software, perfect services, but doesn't work together. So that will be the place where all the ecosystem start working together, orchestrated across all the use cases. I think that the use case is fairly obvious for those that have started to look at the robotics. In the supply chain, the stock scanning, so how we can quickly get to scan everything that is in a store or in the warehouse. So stock picking and the stock moving. So the last one is very mainstream. The second one starts to be mainstream. So this is the use case that has the most adopted by retailers today. Of course, the in-store is another story. I think it's not that mainstream. We have seen some countries, in China and in Japan in particular, that started to really develop this robotics deployment in a store, but it doesn't successfully drive any ROI. I mean, that I've been working personally on the paper robots. It was more used as a gimmick and a way to directly attract customers in a store rather than to really answer and manage customer expectations. So still a huge gap between what we could do with robotics today and what the customers are looking for in a store, but use cases that we have to explore, because looking at the technology, I'm personally convinced that is going to happen. So a few slides about ROI, efficiency by bringing the robot in the warehouse. I will just quickly skip just to look at to keep on time. And we have been working with Accenture as well to design what will be the robot of the future. So Designaffairs is a specific acquisition of Accenture, and we have been exploring about how the robot should be designed to efficiently, firstly, automate the stores, but secondly, to be modular. A domain that we don't get to describe in the slide, but we are looking at the moment as well, is sustainability. I mean, that's having a robot that is sustainable is not bringing robotic in sustainable activities, but as well to make sustainable robots. And sustainable robots meaning that the robot, when it is not efficient anymore, is not getting to the garbage. It's not something that we want to drop. We want to reskill it. We want to reuse it. And that's why we're looking at about robots that could be modular, how we can have one single platform that could operate across use cases. So in this video, you can get to see the version that has been designed by our company. There is no sound. Don't ask me for sound. So the base, this AMR version on the bottom, is the same for whatever the use case that you can get to see. We just had modules on top of it, and we can easily shift and to play across use cases. So now the question about the robotic activation, about how we can start really deploying the robots in the stores. So it is a question that has to be asked from our clients, and they are really looking about what is the most efficient way to get started. So we develop a methodology. Firstly, looking about the existing use case, looking about what has been done and what is the current context of our clients, where we get to spend a couple of weeks just looking about everything that could be automated and the way where the robot could drive efficient impact. Secondly, looking at the strategy, where we'll be developing the value case. And again, I'm not speaking about business case, but a value case, where we evaluate the business value impact of bringing the robots. Test and learn, so where we make a first pilot, and scaling. So of course, the timing depends about the use cases, but give you a range of how long we need to directly enable the first robots for our clients. And specifically on the first one, I just want to specifically deep dive on this one. The way that we could make it happen, and it is illustrative because the timing depends really about the ambition of our clients. But we are looking about bringing, firstly, a full assessment of the existing of the use cases. So it is where we are the most creative. It is the time where we could think about any kind of exploration of robotics in the store. So we are spending a week working with a client about any crazy idea they may have, or any crazy idea we have already explored, on bringing the robot in the stores. Secondly, we simulate. So simulation is very interesting. I will share some videos afterwards where you will get to see how the robot directly works in a store and how we could measure efficiently the impact of the robot. So we have plenty of videos. I pick up a few of them just to display and to share how it works. And afterward, we get to capture the KPIs, looking a bit again about the productivity and of course the quality of the service, but as well the employee satisfaction. So through this simulation, we could even measure the number of steps of a normal employees will have to do, and how many of steps the person will do if there is a robot that is deployed in this use case. So it is, again, not driven only by finance, but as well driven by the employee's experience and the customer experiences. And at the end, of course, we make a typical Accenture priority matrix. For those that never get to work in consulting, it is where you have a huge matrix where you say costs, ROI, and then you start to put the points and looking about which one will be the quick win and which one will be a long-term investments. But that helps us to have identify the low-hanging fruits where we could quickly accelerate on some use cases, and those that will be a long strategy development. I believe maybe there is some question, but I keep remembering that it will be asked at the end. So still 10 minutes to go through some simulations. So this one is an example about how the robot could be operating in a warehouse or in a dark store while using still humans working aside. So today, I think the best robots in terms of warehouse automation could manage 80% of the stock. And the reason why we don't achieve 100% is because some products, some parcels are too big, too heavy, and if we design the robots for this very specific and rare kind of dimension, the robot will be way too costly and very too complex to deploy. So we keep using a mix between humans and robots, and we get to simulate about how the robot will get to operate. It could be in a store, it could be directly in the warehouse, and I lost my robot. It's coming back. And so you can get to see how it can get to operate. Of course, it's very basic. In that kind of simulation, we are not simulating the physics. So for those working in robotics, we are not using gazebo, we are not using such kind of simulations. We are looking about discrete event simulation. We are just looking about how the process will be automated by using such kind of robots. And we are looking about how many robots we may need to operate a specific use case. What is interesting as well with our simulation is that we could even simulate what would be the traffic in a store, looking about how we could redesign the stores, and specifically looking about where people will be going and accordingly deploying the robot. So we have those simulations that allow us to directly simulate a crowd in a store, in a retail, and that will be from this kind of simulation that we could start evaluating the best use cases and how the robot could be deployed and when they can start to operate in a specific condition. One of the use cases I didn't mention is, of course, the cleaning, for instance, of the SL. That is another topic that is extremely demanded by our clients. Afterward, you get some metrics, some measurement about the efficiency of the robots, and then you can start building the roadmap for our clients. Another simulation about exactly how a crowd gets to be deployed and how it gets to move in the store. Factors that we get to look at today for our clients. I will quickly skip this. And this is a version where you can see a 2D simulation, but in fact it is a 3D we can play. And as I mentioned at the beginning, looking at the loading and unloading is a factor that we are specifically looking at because there is a lot of waste of time in terms of how we could deliver faster and refill faster the product in a store. And on the right, I don't know if you can see it, but this big grid is a 3D version where all the products are stored and where you can get to have robots moving in these grids in 3 dimensions on the floor and even through some elevation model. So, just for the last 5 minutes, I would like to bring some dream beyond this retail industry, but looking about what is currently happening. And so, we are very fortunate in Accenture to have a research department specifically looking about what will be the future of robotics. I just wanted to bring some outlook about what are those new innovation upcoming. We are currently mixing robotics and metaverse, not just using a headset to dance with a robot, mainly getting to work with robot and how we could teleoperate robots. So this is kind of use cases that we're exploring. Remote operation is as well a very important topic. I really encourage you to join the next session that will be presented by Falk that specifically gets to describe inspection because that is another domain that is exploding at the moment and that is just fascinating. Few videos about how we get to combine the work we do in terms of metaverse and in terms of robots. I will just leave you looking at the video because it is self-explanatory from my perspective. So the operator, as you can see, is just using the metaverse to get to control remotely the robot and to define the next action of the robot. One of the huge benefits is that instead of having one robotic expert in all location, you can have a single person that teleoperates all the robots deployed globally. So the benefit, of course, is one person, one expert, one metaverse, 100 robots deployed across the globe. So that is a kind of use cases and deployment that we are currently running. Next video, I will shift it because it's very close. And in the remote operations, we have this bottom dynamic spot that gets to directly interact with the constraints of human environments. Again, I think that will be presented in the next sessions, but where you can get to see robots operating in a very complex environment. Opening a door, it looks easy for a human, but for a robot, it's just a mess. Like taking the lift, we thought it would be like just clicking on the button, but it is just a nightmare. So things that looks very complex for a human could be very simple for a robot, but the opposite is true. Something very easy for a human could be very complex for our robots. And of course, we are exploring as well other domains. So I mentioned about inspection, working with startups and emerging legged robots. The e-waste management, sorting, about how we can get to use robots to recycle products For those using an iPhone, you may know that Apple has a massive factory to recycle the Apple products. Most of our clients are looking about using the robots to do it. It is very hard, very complex, very detailed, and that, from my perspective, will be a sustainable factor of the robotics. I am close to the end. I think maybe we can leave some time for the question. Thank you very much for your participation. Hope there are plenty of questions. We'll be delighted to answer. One question. What are the biggest challenges in robotics? A very good question. I think that it is a very broad question. I mean that maybe a question has been asked at the beginning of the presentation, not because I answered maybe about this. But I will give you a parallel that I see from robotics and digital, because I've been working in digital the last 10 years. And the adoption of digital was very hard at the beginning, because when you get to work on digital, you had to really understand almost how it was working at the code level. Now, for those working in digital, you have so many abstraction layers that you don't have to deal anymore with all the coding factors. You can directly play with the interface and getting to make your digital application develops. I think that what is happening today with robotics, thankfully, is that we have this abstraction layer that is happening, thanks to software companies, the hardware qualities and the robustness of the hardware. So tomorrow, if you have to develop on a robot, you don't need to necessarily understand how the hardware is working. There are abstraction layers allowing anybody that knows how to code, having some computing science experiences, to manage robots. So the challenge in the past was understanding the hardware. I think the future of the challenge of the robotics will be how we orchestrate a robot from different typologies and across use cases. Of course, there is a legal dimension that has to be addressed. I'm not a legal person, but it is a big problem that we have to deal with when we deploy robots to our clients. Which retailers are starting to implement the concept you described? So for the store of the future, we have a client, I can't name it, but based in Thailand, specifically looking about setting this store of the future. I think that announcement will be done by the end of the year. And in Europe, we have two giants, one in France and one in Germany, where we are working with them to explore and assess the use cases. I can't name them. Firstly, because it's recorded, because we still have confidentiality, but we are at the stage of looking about how we could evaluate all the use cases for future deployment in a store. On the warehouse, I think we're working with the biggest on automating their warehouse at two levels for the deployment, but as well on the integration of the robots in their legacy system. How can AI improve robotics area? So I think this is an excellent question, because artificial intelligence happens to work at multiple layers in robotics. From inspection, and again, I invite you to join Falk that is going to describe how inspection is going to work. So computer vision, the navigation, the decision making. So all those factors will have an influence about the robotics efficiency. And so the AI will be the technology that allows the robots to not be a stupid industrial robot making a repetitive task, but more becoming a workforce that could naturally manage some very complex situation while keeping the employee and the human at the center of the experience. So we strongly believe the robots will augment the workforce performance and not necessarily trying to substitute human workforces. Other questions? What is the most interesting robot you have seen until now? I discovered, so I will be fascinated to meet in person the Tesla bot. And there is recently an announcement from Robotics that they are developing the 4-in-1. That is another robot, a humanoid. So I will be impressed, I think, to see this robot working. I have been fascinated by the snake robot. For those that have never seen it, please watch videos on the internet. It is interesting to see like a snake moving, but it is a robot. It is good for inspection in the pipeline and so on. So interesting use cases. And I think the bottom dynamic spot is just when you are looking at these robots, you have the feeling it is a dog, except that it is very noisy. I mean that it is. We don't see it on the video, but it is. If you look at its reel, it is very, very noisy because you have all the fans running to reduce the temperature of the robot, and it is really really noisy. Yeah. What else? Oh, I think it is. I have seen a lot of robots that fails, so it was quite interesting as well. It was in my past life. We'll see more micro-fulfillment centers in our neighborhoods. It is a good question. Today, there is clearly a strategy to deploy dark stores in city centers, trying to multiply the numbers of warehouses, trying to have less big warehouses and more smaller ones. So definitely, I believe that could be a risk that could happen, having a dark store or micro-fulfillment center that happens to be close to your home. So yeah, that is, from my perspective, is something that is going to happen.
Any other questions from the audience?
Yes. Yes.
So I just wanted to ask, when you come up with like newer and more efficient versions of the robots, how can you ensure that the older versions are still going to be useful and not just left on the waste?
So it is what we are exploring today. So we are working at a point of view level, looking about what are the factors of sustainability of a robot. Of course, the basics will be the consumption. So we have seen already clients selecting a specific robot because it consumes less than others. So that will be one of the dimensions. But now we're looking about how the robot will be recycled in terms of materials, but as well how it could be reskilled. Having a modular approach of a robot where we could easily shift some modules by another one will be a way to increase the sustainability. I see it like a laptop versus a desktop. The laptop, at the end, you crash it. The desktop, you can change some modules to just keep it alive. So I think it is a dimension we are looking at the moment. Industrial robots has been running during 20, 30 years without any problem. So in some industries and factories. But that's definitely a factor we have to explore. Not getting to recommend the most effective one, but as well the one that brings sustainability in the execution and at the end of the life. Okay, so no additional question?
I will give you, Mike.
You mean I don't have the information, to be honest. That I mean that if you mean that which platform we can get to use and the level of maturity of those platforms, we have already platforms that scales robot deployment. So I will say for me it is one of the highest level of maturity. Now, to be very transparent, there are plenty of vendors, platform, startups that bring these new layers of artificial intelligence and automation to orchestrate the robots. And we are working to make benchmarking across those platforms. So we are testing them in our labs, in our incubation team, looking about those that could be the most promising partners to scale our future robotic deployments. Perfect. So thank you very much again for your time. It was a pleasure.
I think we have 2 more questions.
Okay, sorry, no questions. What? I need a full fridge as a service. Can robots help me with that? Yes, of course. If you don't eat, it will be fine. In how long do you predict that BD Atlas, as a similar human-like robot, will be able to perform some agile motions as a human? It is a big question. I mean, that it depends on the use cases and the industry. Again, helping elderly or a disabled person, it could happen very soon. In a store, in a factory, I'm doubtful. As I mentioned, a Tesla bot could be the sort of robot that operates directly in multiple use cases. So very hard to predict. It is a new breed of robot that is upcoming, and the adoption of those robots could take like 5 to 10 years. I don't think it's going to be mainstream in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much for really interesting insights in this area. I really enjoy it. Hope you see you next year on Open Slava.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.